Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Stadium for Norwich City against Reading. It feels like 2 minutes since we've had a championship game of football to discuss, and that is what we have this evening. Norwich, of course, it's second, Reading in third. It's all set up for an entertaining, interesting game of football. A real test for Norwich City, of course, who have played a lot of teams in the bottom half of the league table. And I can now bring you the team news. One change for Norwich City this evening. Onel Hernandez drops out. Liam Gibbs comes in. So Norwich City line up like this. That will be a 4-3-3. Krul in goal. Aarons, Omar Ahmedeli, Hanley and Byram the back four. Gibbs will be the sixth role, the more defensive role, with Nunez and McLean ahead of him. It will be Sargent on the right, Ramsey on the left, with Temu Pukki up front. The subs bench, Angus Gunn, Ben Gibson, Jordan Hugill, Kieran Dowell, Gabriel Sara, Danel Sanani and Onel Hernandez. So that is Norwich City's lineup for this evening's game. There we go. Had it ready. Look at that. Ever the professional. Sam, let's bring you in. What do you make of that? Possibly a slight change of shape for Norwich City this evening.
Yeah, and I think it makes Norwich probably considerably sturdier in that midfield. Not only bringing back Liam Gibbs, who's their most sort of defensive midfielder and fits that mould of a number 6 better than anybody else they've got who can fit into that position while Isaac Hayden's injured. But it also means that it's more of a 4-3-3 than the 4-2-3-1 we're used to. It probably means it's Kenny McLean and Marcelino Nunez flanking Liam Gibbs in a midfield 3 as opposed to the 4-2-3-1 where Aaron Ramsey has played as an advanced number 10 in that 3. He obviously will, we imagine he'll go out to the left. And I think that makes sense for such a big game. Obviously, Norwich come to a ground where they'll face a good championship side who are only a point off them in the table. It's a big game and potentially one where Norwich maybe would take a point. So going with this slightly sturdier setup, slightly more robust, especially given the problems they've faced in recent times in the midfield area of the pitch and defensively contributing from those players, I think it makes total sense. And you could probably see it coming when Dean Smith was speaking both after that Blackpool game and in his pre-match press conference for this game. He seemed very keen to get Liam Gibbs in. We know he's a player who Dean Smith very much rates highly, as is Kenny McLean. So I didn't see him dropping out. And I don't think Onel Hernandez did enough at Blackpool to ensure that he got a starting berth. So it all makes sense to me. And I think it probably is, balance-wise, the best lineup they can put out at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. I'll bring you the Reading team. Just trying to work out what formation they're in. As you were speaking there, Sam, they've got Lumley in goal, McIntyre, Holmes, Hutchinson, Guinness, Walker, Junior Hoylett, Loom, Forner, Hendrick, with a front two of Tom Ince and Andy Carroll. Quite an experienced front two, and one that is used to having been played in the Premier League before. Their sub-bench, Buzanis, Abbey, Gwendie, Craig, Jaria, Mate and Zhao. So some big names for Reading on the bench this evening, not least Lucas Zhao, who does have a habit of scoring quite a few goals at this level. Sam, you kind of touched upon Onel Hernandez there. I mean, we've kind of had this conversation since the start of the season about him suiting certain games and also certain moments. So are you surprised, given the nature of this game and probably what we're expecting Norwich City to face, that Dean Smith has dropped him out of the 11?
For some reasons I am, because obviously we're expecting Norwich to play a lot on the counter. Reading are a team that likes to come and attack, and they're a team that's probably going to want to dominate this game and try and take it to Norwich City. But by the same token, you have to balance the tactical setup and the tactical elements with momentum and form and how players have been performing. And you can't drop Aaron Ramsey, and it came down to Ramsey or Hernandez. And given the form Ramsey's in, I think he looks by far the most likely out of the two, especially from the start of a game where probably technical quality is more of a factor than the physical capabilities. I think Ramsey is quite clearly the more likely to create chances from that point of view. Now, what will work in Hernandez's favour is if Norwich score an early goal and can get out in front, and Reading will then be forced to come onto them even more. And once legs get tired, we've seen Onel Hernandez come off the bench and really impress in that sort of counter-attacking athletic role in many games as a substitute. And I think he really could thrive if Norwich can get an early goal. However, if it's Reading that get the early goal and it's the other way around, is he really going to contribute much against a side that will probably look to sit in and prevent Norwich from creating any chances to threaten their lead? probably not. And you're then looking at the likes of Daniel Sinani, Kieran Dowell to come on and affect things. And yeah, so I think it depends how the game pans out. We've seen Hernandez be effective as a counter-attacking substitute, an impact substitute, if you like, on a number of occasions this season. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. But at the moment, can you drop Aaron Ramsey? I don't think there are many Norwich fans that could justify that. There are many Norwich City fans that could justify that decision at the moment at all. And, it makes total sense. Perhaps there would have been a place for Josh Sargent, a decision to be made between Josh Sargent and Ono Hernandez. I think that's probably more likely. That would have been more likely, but we know how much Smith appreciates Sargent as a player, how much he adds to the side from a pressing point of view, and he probably allows them to go a little bit more direct as well. And I know Smith, he's not necessarily wedded to a particular philosophy, but he certainly likes the variety. And he wants the option of being able to potentially go long if they can, and I think Sargent gives them that option. But yeah, coming back to Ono Hernandez, depending on how the game pans out, he could still well have an impact, and probably a bigger impact than he had actually at Blackpool from a starting position.
Absolutely. Reading in a 3-5-2 this evening, just to confirm their formation. So Norwich up against another three at the back, which is a formation that commonly they've done quite well against this season. So maybe that's a positive omen if you're looking for one. There is their team there laid out for you in the correct formation as well. They've obviously upset the apple cart a little bit. There are in a lot of people's bottom three predictions. They've actually surpassed that. They've got the best home record in the Championship so far this season, taking 15 points here so far. I think would that be 5 in their wins, wouldn't it? My maths is right. So Sam, in terms of this and Norwich City having to adjust to obviously oppositions and going away from home, what sort of game are you expecting tonight? Because even though Reading are in the position they are you still expecting Norwich City to have the ball and dominate the ball? I mean, it's something that we've kind of seen in patches rather than prolonged period in games like this on the road.
I think it could be one where we don't really see any team dominate the ball. We've seen a few games like that already. Thinking Bristol City, where it was almost it's a bit of a cliche, but sort of a basketball game in how it went from end to end, with nobody really establishing any sort of significant possession dominance throughout the game. And these are two sides that like to attack, that have been effective, in the box this season. Reading have been involved in a few high-scoring encounters, and Norwich certainly aren't strangers to being involved in a bit of a basketball match, given that Bristol City match I just spoke about. So it's one where they probably won't be able to be obsessed over ball possession. I think if they are, then they might come up short, and Reading is certainly a good enough side to present them problems if they're going to try and do that. But you look at their team and they've got Ince and Carroll up front, and that looks to me like a strike force that's designed to maybe work on the counter-attack or work in a slightly more direct system. Are you going to have Andy Carroll up front if you want your strikers dropping in and involved in sort of fast interplay and highly technical spells in possession? I don't really think so. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Reading actually play and how they perhaps change how they would normally play to combat one of the team's best sides and arguably the favourites to go up to the Premier League this season. But yeah, I think it may be reductive to say this team's going to have the ball, or Norwich is going to have to defend for most of the game, or Norwich are going to be attacking for most of the game. I think it will change throughout the game, and the closeness of these sides probably means that the domination of the ball and the possession will be shared between the two sides as the game goes, and Norwich will have to adapt to that, and they'll have to be strong at both sides of their game. So I see it being a bit of an end-to-end one, and hopefully it's one where the quality tells more than the mistakes, as wasn't the case in that Bristol City game. It's second versus third, so you'd like to think it will be dominated by chances and teams playing well on the ball and creating their own issues and chances and goals rather than being gifted them by the opposition. But it's Championship level, so you never know what's going to happen. One thing is for sure, it's quite unpredictable, and unlike a lot of games across professional football, you can't really put your finger on one team and say they're going to have the ball. And I think Norwich are going to face a variety of challenges, and that's probably why they've got the sort of mixed starting 11 in terms of they haven't got one that particularly points to a direct team or one that particularly points to possession base. They've got a little bit of everything, and that's typical Dean Smith for you. So I'm looking forward to it, but I don't think you can necessarily characterise it as one thing that Norwich have to do throughout the game.
Yep, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. And having just answered saying you don't, it's difficult to predict what's going to happen. I'm about to ask you to predict what's going to happen. How do you see this one going tonight? It's a really interesting test for Norwich City, isn't it? A really interesting time. There's been a lot of debate about this kind of performances against results and how perhaps they haven't been as aligned as maybe people would want them to be at this stage. And we've been in depth whether that matters or not. But what are you expecting to happen here this evening? And of course, I'll throw in that score prediction as well if you.
Well, Mystic Adam Harvey has told me to go for a 1-1 this evening, but I'm going to be slightly more optimistic for our viewing pleasure, and I think this could well be high scoring. I think Reading have been involved in 2-3-alls already this season, and they're already sort of look like a bit of a swashbuckling side. We haven't seen too many of those classic encounters from Norwich this season, but they've certainly got the potential with some of those players in there. I think it's going to be a very close one, and I'll go for 2-2 because I think, it's going to be. I think as soon as you predict that sort of thing, it feels unlikely to happen. Maybe I should have gone for a 0-0, and then we're probably likely to get a 2-2 or a 3-2. But obviously, let's hope Norwich can produce something a little bit better than a 2-2. Although against third in the league, to keep them probably at arm's length for now, I think probably a good deal of Norwich fans would take a point. I don't think that's how the game's going to be. I don't think it's going to be there's going to be any sort of wasting time from Norwich with the scores level. But I see these two sides cancelling each other out with their sort of attacking firepower, and I will go for a 2-2. And what about you? No sitting on the fence this time.
I don't know. I think I said in like a Reading site that I did that I could see this being a bit mad and a bit high scoring. The fact it's a free has probably filled me with a bit more confidence on Norwich's behalf, because this season they've played, for me, their best football against a free, with probably the exception of that 20 minutes against Blackpool that came against a free, didn't it? So lots of teams in the Championship do it. That seems to get the best out of the Josh Sargent and Timo Pukki partnership as well. So I think Norwich will win here tonight. I think they'll win 2-1. I think that's what I'm going to go with. Of course, you can tune in Pinkin.com, the place to go, and the Pinkin Plus app as well. I'll be on the live blog this evening to bring you all of the updates as they happen. And of course, you can join the debate over there as well, and we'll have all the analysis and reaction from the Medeski Stadium, whatever the scoreline, come the full-time whistle. Thank you very much for watching. What Sam's going to do is pan around and show you the Norwich City fans in the away end, hopefully, if it doesn't break his laptop, because they are just down there. If the light focuses, they go. They're in that second section that you can see. Hopefully that's not made you too dizzy or seasick or anything like that. But there's the Medeski Stadium. A glorious setting for Norwich City this evening, and hopefully a glorious setting for 3 more Championship points. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.